So I've never read anything that he wrote or attributed to him that, in my view, indicated that he actually understood God's law correctly. He did not accept the books of James, Revelation, Jude, or Hebrews as being inspired, and thus they went to the back of if you have a Lutheran Bible that was organized as Martin Luther organized it, those 4 books are shoved to the back because he said he could not find Christ in those books of the Bible. So given these issues, just to name a few, should we today hold to the understandings and theological positions of Martin Luther? You see, truth is unfolding. All truth is unfolding, including Bible truth. God is infinite. We're finite. Infinite, finite. How big's the gap? Infinite gap. We are never to stop advancing, either on this planet or in the earth made new. We never stop advancing in our understanding, insight, knowledge of God. He's infinite. We never become infinite. We're always moving forward. Martin Luther was a man who moved forward in truth. He came from a very dark understanding of what was taught, and he moved forward. Yet we should not seek to promote the belief system of Martin Luther as if we're moving forward. Theologians today who promote Luther's views are not moving into the light, they're moving us into the darkness. Let me give you an example. If you were in a cave, and as you're leaving the cave, you're walking out into the light, you're moving from darkness into the light. But if you're in the full sunlight and you're walking into the cave, now 2 people, one walking out of the cave, one walking into the cave, at some point they will pass. As they pass at that moment, they're both being illuminated by the same amount of light. One's moving into the light, one's moving into the darkness. If we teach Martin Luther's penal substitution theology views, we are moving from light into darkness. We're not moving from darkness into light. We must acknowledge that Martin Luther, we must acknowledge him and give thanks to him and what he did to move the ball forward, but never go back. Never go back. Never hold to his understandings. Now, if you understand where Martin Luther was coming from, this makes perfect sense. You'll make perfect sense as to why penal substitution theology 500 years ago was a positive move forward, but it's a definite move back today. Why? There were 2 grand lies, 2 very huge lies that underpin Martin Luther's development and creation. I'm saying that creation. He created this doctrine of penal substitution theology. And what are the 2 grand lies? 1, God's law functions no different than human law. System of imposed rules without inherent consequence, which requires the divine magistrate to adjudicate breaches in the rule, inflict proper punishments for it, and those deeds must be accounted for in some way. Somebody has to pay the penalty. You can accept Jesus' payment. It's accounted to your record book in heaven. You're declared to be righteous even though you're not. This was all constructed by Luther based on 1 lie, the idea that God's law functions like human law. But there was another lie that led to him. And because he was wanting to get rid of the other lie, he never saw the first lie. He never understood that. But there was a second lie that Martin Luther did understand. He recognized it to be false. And the penal substitution theology came along for the express purpose of ridding the church or ridding Christians from belief in that lie. And that lie? The teaching of purgatory. This particular doctrine caused terrible fear in people, caused them to see God in a horrible light, and the church abused this doctrine to coerce and manipulate people because they would tell people that their loved ones were in purgatory, but they could get their loved ones out of purgatory if they would pay the church some money. And so the great offering calls of the day, they actually had a rhyme that went like this: whenever a coin in the coffer rings, a soul from purgatory springs. Thus, penal substitution theology, created by Martin Luther, was designed to directly undercut the church's teaching on purgatory. So in penal substitution theology, it's taught that all sins from every person who's ever lived, past, present, and future, were placed upon Christ at the cross, and 2,000 years ago, God punished all the sins in Jesus 2,000 years ago. And if you accept the legal payment that Jesus has made in your behalf, then the punishment has already been carried out. There is no place or need for purgatory because you will be declared to be righteous even though you're not, and you get the legal accounting of purged to your record book in heaven. The records have been purged of sin. This was the reason for the penal substitutionary theology to come forward. And it was a move forward. It's like coming out of a cave, moving into the light. But if we, in the light, go into the cave or moving into darkness, to teach this idea today is to put obstacles up. God actually prophesied in Scripture that the Reformation would be completed by a group of people who are referred to in the Bible as the remnant, who come back to worship the designer, him who made the heavens, the earth, the sea, and all that in them is, who reject the imperial human law construct, worship designer, creator law constructs, and actually experience regeneration, transformation of the inner person so that it's no longer I that live, but Christ lives in me. We're actually Christ-like. Continuing on with this theme, in the fourth paragraph of the introduction, the fourth paragraph states, yes, it was in Romans that Luther found the great truth of justification by faith alone. So class, what is justification by faith?